42 years ago, I remember proposing to my wife. And the interesting thing, and I only rethought this the other day as I was putting this together, the assumptions that I jumped to and how I misread some of the reactions I got when I called my mom and dad and said, "Mom, I'm going to get married." And they were excited. They didn't know her. I was coming back from overseas. And they said, "Well, when do you want to get married?" I said, "In 30 days. And the sound in their voice, the gap of, I was expecting that they would say, "Hey, great, congratulations." I got none of that. All I got was a series of questions. And I was only 19 at the time. Prior to that, in my life, I'd only attended one wedding. So I never was part of planning one. I was in my brother's wedding, but I had no idea of the planning that went on before it, the effort it took during it, and what happens after the wedding. I just didn't know. And so I jumped to a lot of conclusions. What was I thinking about? What was I not thinking about when it talked about roles and responsibilities of the groom in terms of preparation for a wedding? What was I feeling about the wedding and a honeymoon? Get this, and you may find this ridiculous. My dad says, when I got back home, he says, "Well, where are you guys going for your honeymoon?" I said, "Honeymoon? I just came back to get married. Why would I go on a honeymoon? I want to be here with you guys." And my dad, you can imagine, he's scratching his head thinking, like, does this guy even know anything? And he says, "Where are you going for your wedding night?" I said, "Well, Dad, we're just going to come back to the house. We're going to hang out with everybody." He says, "You can't do that." And I had no idea. I was absolutely clueless. And I was interpreting what he was saying, that I was dumb or that I was stupid or he didn't want to participate. He didn't want me in the house. My mom didn't want me around. No. I just was clueless about what was going on. I was assuming all the wrong things about their reactions through my ignorance. Now, I think that's funny now, but at the time, it wasn't so funny. And so I want to talk this next few minutes about assumptions and things I've learned. Not much of this is original with me, and I want to pique your interest in trying for you to clarify and challenge your own assumptions. So assume means to pretend to have all the information about a matter. And presumption is overstepping or points to the probability of something, but you still don't have the details. You still don't have the evidence that the actions you're about to take are grounded in fact. So an assumption is the act of assuming or moving forward, even though there's gaps in your story, even though there's gaps in what you understand to be happening around you. So we selectively screen the flow of information and quickly come to a judgment without filtering out the rules we have. And one of the things that I've learned is we all have these rules that we make, and they run constantly in the back of our mind about oughts and shoulds and about life, how it should be and what we think should and should not happen. So one of the things that I need to ask myself is, what data or what information do I have that will help me bridge the gap in my understanding? And there are some things that may trigger anxiousness or trigger you to assumptions. I know there are for me. There are different things that I've learned. Anything about family or relationships, the whole issue of religion or spirituality, especially in the marketplace. There are three major areas regarding assumptions that I've come to learn about. The first one has to do with acceptance. In other words, when someone criticizes me, do I feel personally rejected? Am I taking it personal, even though it may be objective? It may have nothing to do with who I am as a person. A second one is the whole notion of competence. Looking at, because I believe there's only winners and losers, I'm probably a loser because I'm not the captain of the team or something like this. And we judge ourselves very harshly. A third one is the issue of control, where I can't tolerate anybody. Once I get a sense that they're trying to control me, I just bolt from them. And this kind of assumption or this kind of area can maybe be a real issue at work. Or maybe misunderstanding what our parents are wanting to do in our lives. Or the role that our spouse plays in our lives. I got this thing. It's a difficult lesson to learn in life that much of what's going on around me has nothing to do about me. And so this is a sign of maturity or immaturity in either case. So let's apply this kind of thing with our spouses. There's some negative assumptions that we can attribute to our spouse when we're lacking information for different reasons. And one is that my spouse intends to hurt me. He's only saying this because he wants to hurt me. She's only saying this because she wants to hurt me. A second one could be that my spouse doesn't care about me anymore. Or a third one can be that my spouse doesn't love me anymore. And without all the information, without conversation and dialogue, we can act on these assumptions and change the trajectory of a relationship with somebody that we married or that we are in love with. So some thoughts that I came across that may help for couples out there in terms of addressing this. And one of the things is we need to verbalize our appreciation for our spouses. And I've been married 42 years, and the need to do that is just as strong today as it was when the day in which my wife and I first met. I think where I borrowed this idea from is being able to verbalize one's uncertainty about an upcoming planned event or some kind of experience that you're not sure about. So instead of just, yeah, I can do that, no big deal, talk about that. I know when my wife and I would go through customs together, it was just fun for her. And for me, I had lots of concerns about, what was happening and, what all the possibilities were. How much better it would have been if Tina and I would have talked about that. But I didn't know that it was an issue as well at the time. State a complaint with a request for change. In other words, instead of just being mad when someone comes home late after, let's just say the kids come home late, is just say, hey, if you're going to be late, call so I know you're coming. Or if you can't make it for dinner, call so that I know how to plan otherwise. And so another one is taking turns explaining your dreams and your hopes about some things. So I hope you get off this weekend, or boy, I can't wait until we can go on a trip overseas together, something like that. These are just some questions that can help clarify your thoughts and feelings, and so reducing acting on assumptions that my wife doesn't love me or my husband doesn't care about me like he used to. So let me recap a little bit. Number one is we all have assumptions, every one of us. And it's good if we can tune in to ourselves and see if we're acting on, even though limited information that may be inaccurate. And that we operate, our rules about oughts and shoulds operate constantly in the back of our minds. And so we're constantly interpreting what's happening in the present based on those rules. And sometimes we don't realize that those rules are distorted or can be flawed. Assumptions, keep in mind now, we pretend that we have all the necessary data that we need to proceed, and that our interpretation about what's happening is accurate or correct. But we can challenge our assumptions by asking ourselves some questions that are grounded in reality and in what is happening now. I can remember many years ago, because I was diagnosed with PTSD a number of years ago, and the way I would react to a locked door was just disproportionate to what was going on. A locked door when I'm coming home from work makes sense because my wife locks the door when I'm not there. To me, it meant something else entirely different because of an unresolved past experience in my life. And so I want to ask myself, what is happening right now? Is it possible that what is happening has nothing to do with me personally? Is it possible? And the answer is yes, it's possible. Many years ago, in a hospital that I worked at, I was told one day that the engineering department wanted to relocate our chapel to a different part of the hospital. And when it was brought to my attention, I jumped to assumptions, and fortunately I didn't act on them, but the assumption was, oh, they don't care about chaplains. Oh, they don't respect me, so they're just going to move without me, or, their minds are all made up. When in reality, when I went to the meeting, none of that was the case. They were just being pushed by certain deadlines to keep the ball moving in the engineering construction world. And so when I went to that meeting, I realized that nobody was trying to do anything. In fact, the choice and the location for the chapel they selected was a perfect option. And the chapel's there to this day, and it serves well. The location still is considered high-value real estate in that organization. So we all deal with assumptions. We all have assumptions. It's one of the regularities in life. So I have some closing comments. Let's just say through the course of the last few minutes, you were thinking like, I need help with assumptions. I've been acting presumptuously. I've been moving out and finding difficulty in my life as a result of dealing with the assumptions of my life. Or maybe I have some I've been acting or living out on assumptions in my intimate relationships or close friendships, and it's not working, and you would like some help with that. There's a lot of people probably in the neighborhoods in which you live that could help you with that. Trained counselors, clinical chaplains, or licensed professional counselors, or psychologists, or licensed clinical social workers that are more than able to help you sort through this whole idea of clarifying and challenging your assumptions. And imagine how much, if you got better by this only by 15% in your life, what difference would that make in your relationships, whether they be at home or at work? It's worth pursuing. There are other people in the community that are in a position to help you. And that there are many community clergy that have specialized training in counseling, and that they are in a position to help you. Or there are professionals in the community called pastoral counselors, that they also have specialized training in counseling. And so I want you to consider that. Don't be afraid. And sometimes you might need to go to more than one kind of counselor before you find a good fit. But keep in mind of this: if you've never been to counseling, you might feel that it's too personal or whatever. Give yourself time to get comfortable when unpacking your issues with someone else who's trained in counseling. My point is, and I've been to a counselor, I've been married 42 years, and we've been to marriage counseling 4 or 5 times. Why? Because it's important. Think about this. Your most important relationships are worth any money you would spend on making sure that they're in good shape. Take, for example, your car. You'll spend a lot of money on your car to maintain it, to get it so that it's running safe and smoothly and efficiently. How much more valuable are your personal relationships and your professional relationships than your car? And yet we think nothing of spending lots of money on our car. And yet when it comes to spending money on our marriage relationships, or I need to improve my relationships with people at work, all of a sudden I want to count dimes and count pennies. I want you to rethink that. And if you feel like you're in a position where you need counseling, explore that possibility. There's many people probably right around you that can help you work that out. There's much more to share on the topic of assumptions. I hope you'll go look at that for your own personal development. If you found this video to be helpful, please click like below, and I hope you will subscribe to my channel. As we navigate life together, until we meet again, my name's Jack Klugh with Compass Courses. God bless you. Bye-bye.